Welcome to Habitual Excellence, presented by Value Capture. This podcast and our company helps you and your team achieve habitual excellence and get better every day by focusing on one clear goal, one set of values, and one way of working. In simple terms, we want to help you create more value by providing the best care and the safest environment for both patients and staff. To learn more about Value Capture and our services, visit www.valuecapturellc.com. Welcome, listeners, to the Habitual Excellence podcast, where we talk to leaders that have been a part of driving some of the most successful and therefore encouraging performance transformations and healthcare delivery across the United States and really all of North America. We certainly have one of those guests today, Meghan Scanlon, who is the Director of Operational Excellence at Penn State Health, her current posting, but has been a vice president and in other key roles at a number of our great hospitals and academic systems, including vice president at Duke Health. And before that, a checkered past as a leader at Value Capture, advising other top systems in the United States, in Canada, almost too many to mention, and Meghan can share a little bit more about her background in a minute. We are going to talk today together about a topic that's really important, and Meghan and I have chosen to call it, Why Do We Still Choose Chaos? Why is the effective choice in healthcare to let things happen as they will based on individual effort and really a modest and in some ways very traditional, outdated way of managing people in their performance instead of creating something better? And there really is no one better in my mind to talk about this than Meghan, who is one of the most insightful thought leaders in the space, as well as deeply experienced in making the right thing happen. So Meghan, welcome to the pod.
Morning. Thank you, Ken. Great to be here.
Meghan, I bragged on you a little bit, but can you share a little bit more about your background, where you started and how you got into this and how you got to your current place, and just a little bit more about yourself?
Absolutely. I'm an industrial engineer from Penn State, a proud Penn State graduate by degree, and I started my career in a Johnson & Johnson company in the medical device diagnostic field within manufacturing. So in some way, shape, or form, my entire career has been in healthcare. Very early on, I was lucky enough to be trained by folks from aerospace and automotive industries in Lean. And we were working hard to produce value to our customers and improve the quality of our products in the space of pathology and clinical chemistry. So as I was exploring that space and working in different parts of our business, I found a group within our company that was taking what we were having success with in our own manufacturing in terms of improvement, lean management, and mindset to the end users of our products, which is how I sort of got into healthcare delivery. I started in clinical laboratories. Did that across the globe for about 10 years and learned a lot about a lot of different things and a lot of different leaders and how healthcare organizations think and run and set their goals and targets. I got really interested in going from the laboratory to more of a value stream approach. We were doing replicating great success and results. And then over time, we started to work with leaders who, if we had the right conditions created, if we had the right leaders in the room, if we produced the right results, if we developed the right capability, they would say, hey, thanks for helping us in the laboratory. Let's look at pharmacy next. Let's look at perioperative. Let's look at radiology, even food services in one organization. And so I kind of got enamored with this idea of what would it take to have a leader strategically be looking at their entire house or entire organization and putting it on a journey for excellence, as opposed to slice by slice across the organization. And that's actually then what led me to you and Value Capture. There was an opportunity to do something that was just like that, and you allowed me to come in and explore that curiosity and do some great work along the way.
Well, and you certainly did that, and you're very gracious as always. I was smart enough to, when you indicated you might be open, to bring you in, and you know, I became a believer in Meghan Scanlon's coaching ability in the deepest way as you help transform our own organization and therefore our ability to help our clients. And I see you have Paul O'Neill's playbook for habitual excellence behind you, our founding non-executive chair, who you and I both know, and certainly a leader who set the whole enterprise that they were had the privilege of leading to on a journey to excellence and not sort of project by project, et cetera. So we had a good model to work side by side in different ways and go forward. So Meghan, let's get further into it. Let's talk about sort of what is the gap? What is the issue? And I was struck as we started thinking about this recording that you said leaders are sort of making an implicit choice at many or most health systems that in fact from the get-go holds us back from the levels of performance of the right thing happening every time the right way that we know are possible and that are frustrating to everybody that it doesn't happen more often or more consistently or always. What is that choice? Can you describe that for the audience? Okay.
I don't know if it is necessarily a choice or we're producing the leaders from the system that has been run historically in this way.
Okay.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
I do think when leaders rise into their roles and they get wider and broader scopes of influence, spheres of influence, they do the best they can with what they've seen and they bring their best
Right.
ideas forward. I think very often, though, the things that happen within healthcare, nobody's broken through, in my mind, in a sustainable way. We've got
Yeah.
pockets of excellence. We've got great case studies and examples, but we don't have what other industries have, which is this generational trajectory of better of the lessons and the learning and having a strong system that produces results reliably, that allows a foundation of stability to be improved upon. And I think that's the other piece of it. Healthcare is different. And I acknowledge that and respect that, but I don't use it as an excuse or a reason why we
Mhm.
can't try to be innovative and lead in these ways. I think it's all the more reason why we have to figure it out. We have to get to stability. And I think so much of how healthcare is just feels like instability on a day-to-day basis. We can't control who walks through our doors. We don't know what the next major crisis, health event, public uh, public incident is going to be. And so therefore we think we cannot get to a more calm and stable and repeatable type of way we work. We feel we may always be on alert, bracing for impact of the next thing that's going to happen. But if you really look at data and if you look at the patterns over time, seasonality, even through the pandemic, you can start to see that while we don't know exactly what's coming at us, we can set ourselves up to be able to respond in kind to whatever does come if we can fix the small things every day that right now are the things that take up our whole world. There's this culture of firefighting in healthcare that's very much rewarded, the reaction, the showing up, the swooping in, the making it better quickly for someone else, and then going on to the next thing, versus the people who are kind of in the trenches day in, day out. The problems are normalized. They expect to come in and have trouble getting meds from pharmacy today because that's how it's been.
Um,
They expect to have a delay in their bed being clean and ready for a patient because that's how it's been. But these are the problems that if we could solve them, and do those usual things unusually well will allow us to have that discretionary effort and capacity to handle the hard things as they walk through the door.
wow. Um, a lot there and powerfully stated. Megan, you and I both have uh, some love of sports, and I know you have experience playing and coaching at multiple levels. One of the metaphors you've used sometimes with me, and maybe you could relate to that to the audience, is a simple sports metaphor about kind of the effective kind of sport we're leading versus what we can start to move toward if leaders choose to. Can you share that?
Yeah, I had an aha recently. I'm always looking for metaphors to help people connect and think practically to things that happen in life. In sports, while it might not resonate with everyone, I think there's enough there that people can think about it. But I'm a team sport player. Those are the things I always did: soccer, softball, volleyball, things like that. And that idea that there are different roles on a team and the team has a common goal. There are rules within the sport that you're playing, and you really rely on each other. And you might have different skills based on the positions you're playing. The things that you do that really take all of this, diverse experience and skill levels, bring them together towards a common goal in order to be successful in winning, whatever that looks like for whatever sport you're playing, to me, I think is really interesting. And one of the reflections I had recently is that when we think about this kind of hero mindset and the rewarding of the firefighter mentality and model, it's almost like everybody kind of feels that pressure to be an individual contributor, to play more of an individual sport. And so they show up, they rely on themselves, they think that they're the ones that have to do the lift to get to the success. And we don't always play that team sport in the same way. I think a lot of us do play team sports or have danced and orchestrated performance amongst people, or a musical instrument and played amongst a group. It's that kind of coordination and that kind of mindset I think that we need more of, so that there's less of this kind of extreme competitive sort of cutthroat mentality. Said differently, that pressure to figure it out very quickly and rely only on yourself versus having the space to truly think, and or actually maybe saying, hey, I need to do something very important in the moment to ensure this doesn't get worse, that people aren't harmed, that we're able to sort of contain the situation, and then buying us the time to solve and think more deeply about it. The problem is that we feel like everything we're doing is that stopgap in the moment, and we just put stopgaps everywhere, but we never actually come back and really try to dig deeper and fix those things. We see the work as how we get through this moment versus how do we make this moment or ensure this moment never happens again.
Yeah, yeah, that's something. And as you know, I'm a simple guy, so it really hit for me when you said implicitly the leadership framework we're using is a little closer to like golf or tennis, where the individual gets out there and they win their match or not,
Mm.
um, versus a soccer or a football. And I thought about that more deeply, and it's leaders listening to this would say, no, of course, we know it's a team sport. Everybody's got to connect and everything. But the truth is we don't manage the connections, and we don't practice the connections, and we don't look and see what's going wrong in the connections every day. And of course, that's what dictates success in a team sport. Yes, individual effort and talent certainly matter, but if the team isn't playing well together and disciplined and can anticipate what the others are doing, and when there are problems, they're addressed, they don't win consistently. And we're taping this a couple days. This is tough for a Penn State alumna and leader. But we're taping this a couple days after Indiana's rise from the ashes to win the national championship. And it's about the system, right, Megan? There's a system there. I'm sure. How did you watch that apart from the tough, you almost beat them this year, but,
Yes.
what were you thinking as you watched that system come together and lift total performance, as that we could learn from in healthcare?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was watching it and looking at the behaviors of the leadership on the sideline. I was
Yeah.
watching the calm and the not overreaction in a negative or a positive way during the game. I was watching the resilience of the teammates on the field who kept coming out and showing up and giving their all every single play. I was watching the communication happen. I was watching the adjustments based on what they were seeing.
Real-time problem solving.
Real time, exactly. And those behaviors, you can see them, right? That's what defines a behavior. It's something you can actually see, take a picture of it, memorialize it in some way. You can see those things. And it speaks to, excellence to me doesn't happen by accident. It speaks to how they live and practice and model every day of the year, not just in that game for that moment. They're ready for the challenges that happen. They didn't know exactly what plays they were going to be run on, but they studied, they prepared, and they were able to adjust and respond in kind and be successful ultimately.
And that means the leaders have a clear framework for success, and then it's practiced, it's understood by all. It's not just implicit, right? And the
Right.
behaviors are modeled, and then there's a system, and it's both rigorous and it's disciplined, and it's also practical and not
Yeah.
overly complex to allow complex things to happen, right? Okay,
And
and
actually, Ken, I love sorry to interrupt you.
no.
I really love the collegiate sports model for thinking of this because that was a
Mhm.
reflection I had a little bit ago. You know, there are different schools and programs that you say like you expect them to win the big game or at least be a part of building up to that big game. And if you think about what collegiate sports are now more than ever, they turn over
Yeah,
entirely every 3 to 4 years.
yeah,
And if you think about how leaders are in not just healthcare, but industries, people don't
yeah.
have that same, we're going to stay and be the franchise player forever. And so thinking about the coaches that are successful and who can bring in new talent consistently and align that talent towards that vision and work within that system, I think there's something there that can be learned from in organizations to create more of that stability so that there isn't such the pull or the tension that
Mm.
can come from when leaders kind of cycle in and out, because I think that is just what is our reality and will continue to be. But there's something in there that I think can be explored and learned.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, you're a natural builder and problem solver. So I look forward to let's pick that thread up. Make sure we continue to pick that up about what could be done. But first, let me ask you to let's go a little deeper on. I love how when I said leaders are making an implicit choice that's holding us back, and you said, well, I don't really love the word choice because they're coming up in a certain model of leadership and then they're continuing it the best they can. And I agree, leaders certainly are well-intentioned, want the right things to happen, put a lot of themselves on the line, bear a lot of cost, I think.
Mhm.
Um, but let's talk a little bit more about the why, right? We know there's a gap between what's possible and what people are doing with best intention, best effort. Yet it is known that there are these systems and disciplined approaches that actually a lot of health systems use, say, on the back end on finance, right? And actually are very rigorous about, but they haven't extended it the same rigor into operations. What, let's talk a little bit. Do we think we know some of the why about why leaders hold back from those models or potentials? You've coached a lot of leaders, you are one yourself. What's in your mind about some of the why when we think about that hard stuff of behavior change and our fears and things like that?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things come to mind. I think there are a multitude of reasons, and I enjoy engaging folks in conversations just like this to learn
Yeah,
their personal whys. Um, but I do think in some ways it's just a matter of understanding what those differences are. I think one of the powers of lean management and the idea of these systems that we're talking about is in their simplicity.
yeah,
I also think that's one of the challenges because it can seem like you're doing it already, or it can seem like you might not see the gap in between what we're trying to do and where we are right now, because it can all sound the same. The difference really
right.
is in the practice. And I think that therein lies another challenge. If you don't
Mm,
see an opportunity or a gap, you're not going to be necessarily motivated to change
right.
or try something different or new. So I do think that's one part of it is the simplicity of it. And if you go and visit somebody who's on that journey, maybe much longer than you, and they've gotten success, it's hard, right? There's so much that's implicit in culture. You might see artifacts, and that is typically what people do. They'll go and they'll be like, wow, that's a great looking board. Take a picture of that. Let's try to put that here. Or,
Probably,
wow,
yeah.
those people sound, you can attribute it to it a lot of different things that seem like they're more heroics or people based, but they really are the system that's producing these types of results with great intention. And that can be really hard because it's very implicit. So one of my big reflections in the past 5 years was I'm guilty of this as well. I do a lot of things implicitly. And
Hmm.
I tried really hard to say, what are the things that I'm doing because of my learned and lived experience, because of the successes, failures that I've had, that I can try to be more explicit about. Because if I can be more explicit, other people can see and learn it and then try to do it too. So I do think that that is part of it. Another part that I think is the pressure of
Yeah,
the people aspect of healthcare, right?
right.
The there's maybe greater risk, perceived risk in what the problems are. And we tend to react to those ones that are most severe. And we employ
Mm,
all of our best resources at those. If we can get, and to me, that's where it kind of the chaos happens because it's way too late in the process
mm,
to make to fix it, so to speak, if you will. But if we can get further upstream with all of the things that I spoke of earlier, the normalized problems that we ignore because we perceive them to be part of what we expect our day to be
yeah.
like, then we can maybe eliminate some of those um, really dire situations that we would be typically forced to react to. So it is about, to me, how do we get to more of that calm? I also actually think that data insights are a big part of this. You know,
Mm,
healthcare is information rich. There are
yeah.
a lot of systems, information technology systems that we use to help us store information, connect information. There are a lot of ways to pull data. The data that we pull, though, tends to be very lagging, outcome-based data. We don't
Yeah.
have a lot of ways to do process data, in the moment data that might be leading indicators of the lagging outcome. But I do think there's an opportunity for increasing data literacy and understanding a little differently what data
Right.
means so that we can set ourselves up with tools, something as simple as a control chart versus a run chart, to really try
Yeah.
to understand. You know, one of the things lately I've been thinking about was not all red is bad, not all green is good, right? But we
Yeah.
tend to see a red and then want to attack it and learn
Yeah.
from it. And that is not a bad thing, right? We do want to say, why did this red happen? But it might not be that the sky has fallen and this red means something more than
Yeah.
something that we might expect in terms of the range of um, results that we're going to get from the processes and systems we currently have. So I think there's a lot in there to
Yeah.
explore and to think about that are gaps for why we get stuck on this kind of chaos carousel.
Right. And if it's sort of how things are being led around you, you don't really have a choice to escape it, right? Unless you're the top leader with courage, or becoming part of a culture that's changing and, heading this direction. So, right. Some of the why where we stay more where we are in a reactive, individual effort system, or at least not explicit management of the day-to-day connections and problems. Yeah. No, I think that's right. Um, we've talked a little bit about better is available and examples are available of, where a great operating system or daily management system, whatever you want to call it, how work is designed, how work is improved, how work is managed, um, are in place. And, Megan, tell a few stories about getting to better, where it's better, and what you've experienced as a leader, what you've seen other people experience, so that people get a flavor of our target state here.
Well, so many examples that come to mind, but I think the one that people can relate to pretty clearly is I had a great opportunity and was working in a children's hospital a few years ago now. And we had, a system to start with that we were building upon and trying to bring in more of this rigorous daily problem
Yeah.
solving. And so earlier in the morning, I think it was during, the breakfast time of day, there was a team member who was taking a patient, an infant, to the bedside of its mother. And in traversing the room, they stumbled on a cord on the floor and tripped. Now, there wasn't severe harm to either the team member or the patient, and there was still a recordable fall that had happened.
Sure.
And so, what happened very quickly within 2 hours in that organization is that because we had this system where they had a tiered huddle structure and it was expected, safe, and rewarded to call out problems that
Yeah.
got in the flow of providing care to your patients. Somebody called out that this had happened and it was shared across the whole house. And so then the charge became after they took care of those two, now we had two patients, we had the team member and the infant itself. So you cared for the injured in that case, and then you wanted to contain that problem. So the charge was within an hour or so that everybody across the whole house look and see, are there any cables within your walk path? It wasn't just inpatient rooms. It wasn't just a nursing activity. Every
Right.
single person in that organization, no matter what your role goal was to look at their workspaces and say, can I safely get from where I need to go and traverse my pathway without any obstruction from a wire? So that allowed us to contain that situation today. People picked up cables that were, and they plugged in
Yeah.
things. They might have rearranged some rooms, moved some
Yeah.
plugged in equipment from one side to the other. Now we're safe for the day. So we're okay in that respect, but we didn't stop there. Within a week, we worked over the next week and we brought a cross-functional team together. We brought nursing. We brought anybody who might walk in a patient space. We brought food service and nutrition. We brought engineering. And we wanted to learn about what was going on because immediately that day we found out in that room that a clip had been broken on the underneath of the bed. Which was why the cable was in the walk space to begin with. It was supposed to be threaded under the bed, but it
Yeah.
was in the middle of the walk space. So we brought all these people in and we had them talk about it. And what we learned through that next week or so is that we actually have 5 or 7, I forget, different types of beds. And we had 1 or 2 different types of clips because it seems simple enough, right? Buy clip, put on bed. But what we learned is that certain clips on different bed types had a higher rate of breaking when, inevitably a cord gets
Sure.
pulled or something like that. And so the failure of those clips caused frustration for engineering to keep replacing them. But also we learned that they weren't the appropriate clips. And
Right.
so something that happened in a patient setting where there was an injury to a team member and a patient became something as simple as we actually don't have the right accessories to our beds in order to thread the wire underneath. And so a week later, we learned the types of beds we had, the best recommended clip, which meant that we might not have used the same clip everywhere, which might be what we want to do to standardize, get volume discounts, things like that. But it left us vulnerable in terms of our process for keeping everyone safe. So I think it's a great example, right? There's so much that was in there. The safety and ability of the team member to voice a problem, the actions that then happened very quickly to ensure that we wouldn't have that problem for a different reason anywhere else that day. And then the actual time to gather the people, dive deeply on that issue, figure out what the response needed to be, and then make the changes with the parts they ordered and better visual management around how do you know which clip for which bed as you put beds out into the units.
Megan, it's a great example and a concrete one. And I just want to make explicit for our audience. This wasn't one-off problem solving with extra effort devoted to this unit. This was an organization deciding that these daily impacts were the things that they needed to get great at solving quickly and bringing people to and creating a system where people could come together quickly to
Yes.
solve them. So solve this problem, the cascade to solving other problems, and then the building the way we get together and solve the things that hurt our people first or patients, but also just get in the way of work, right? So if I'm a leader listening to this, Megan, I'm also thinking, wow, that took a lot of time and resources. How should I think about resources required or time required to actually solve problems um, daily, rapidly, bringing people together? If I'm thinking about big numbers and labor effort and things like that, what
Well,
how
that's a
can we
really
help
big
people be a little
question.
more relaxed?
That's a big question. And I think, it's not an easy answer because you build this capability and then it changes with every aha moment
Yeah,
and every experience you have. So to me, it's more, changing what's expected and building that capability. But you do need, to me, um, to support and have problem solving people like myself,
yeah,
my teams historically, be there. You need to make sure that the people doing the work can have time away from the work in
yeah,
order to do that. So I've worked in places where we've tried a lot of different experiments for how to make that happen. We've had, education events where we teach people certain things, see waste, things like
yeah,
that. We've had problem solving support and help. Certain days we might have people who have discretionary time off on the bench. I
yeah.
don't know the right way to say it, but that can come in and help. But the idea isn't that we need to have, 30% more people in order to
No.
do this, right? Because what I've said most of my career is that the rate limiting factor for how fast we go isn't me or my team's capacity, because there's so much that has to be true because we can't do it without the partnership and um, with the people on the floor who are doing the work. And so it really is a balance. But the good thing about it is as you start to solve problems, and you don't have to solve them all at once, but as you start to solve them, you build that momentum.
Yeah.
Just like thinking about, a progression in sports or something, like you learn things as you go. You don't come out of the
Right.
gate learning all of the trick plays, set plays, different moves, change in direction, things like that. You learn the basics and you get really good at the basics. And then you get ready and you learn and you deepen and you develop more complex skills. But there's an
Yeah.
energy that happens from that and a momentum and a groundswell. And that can be something that allows you to do more quickly. Because if we have everyone solving those little perceivably
Yeah.
small problems every day, as opposed to 20 or 30 people whose job it is dedicated to solve problems. I mean, we could solve hundreds, thousands of problems, and they're
Right.
not all the big, hairy, scary ones. Some of them are just the little ones that are annoyances that you might not even stop to try to
Right.
solve today because you're just like, well, this is how it is here, and I'm just going to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so true. And I'm mindful and thinking about some of the work we've done together. And I know you continue to help leaders see right at the beginning 40, 50, 60% of everybody's time on the floors who are supposed to be caring for patients is just ground up and dealing with the same problems occurring every day. And in the supply departments, it's similar. And so it's how do we redirect some of that effort, build some of this problem solving into operations with some support, but not a specialized function.
Exactly.
And then I'm also mindful you're coaching at UVA or work together at Duke, you know, total performance rises, right? A couple of years in, everything's better. Um, and I can share with the audience some of the guests that have been on this podcast, you know, they have operations running great, and the total leader effort per day is about 2 hours. And the rest of the day, they're out doing strategic growth and things like that. And, it's all about committing again to making it a team sport and managing the gaps and the problems more explicitly, effectively with the system. So that's awesome. All right. So Megan, let's start to talk about how we can better support leaders, help more leaders move in this direction in healthcare. You started to lay some really interesting ground back there that I promised to get back to of how do we create the leadership culture, the movement, uh, an evolving tradition, right? Because people are taught to lead by the leaders that go before them, and so we've got to sort of shift things. And I bet you have some ideas about that. So
I've had the great fortune to work with a lot of really impactful leaders, and I've been shaped by each and every one of them. Um, Gosh, and I think a lot about safety just as a core value in an
yeah,
organization. And I think a lot about like, do our leaders feel safe? What is the expectation? What charge has been put in front of them?
yeah,
Um, for me, it's, can we be willing to spend our time a little differently? Like you said,
yeah,
we're not talking about thousands of hours out of the gate, but, how can we take 15 minutes a week to start? How do we take an hour of education time? How do we
yeah,
experience something else? I really think it's also about, engaging the experts in the organization a little bit more and maybe differently. How do we ask more questions versus put out more directives? Things like that. But I mean, to me, as a team sports player, I thrive in systems with coaches. I need a coach. I do
mhm,
best when I can connect and fill my cup and learn from outside
yeah,
eyes and perspective. And so that learner mindset, that kind of growth mindset, that willingness to be uncomfortable and sit in a space and say, I don't know, I need to learn more to get to a new heightened level of understanding. I think all of those things are a part of it. But to me, it is about, I do believe when we know better, we do better. So if we can figure out a way to say, hey, here's the need that we have, we
yeah,
need to meet this need. What is the path to getting from where we are now and where we need to be? And that typically includes some experiences, some education, some time spent differently, and then most importantly, the space to think about what it is that we're doing, to reflect and really cement or realize the learnings that we're having so that we can intentionally and planfully move forward again. So that's now you're hearing maybe the idea of living a PDSA or a plan, do, study,
Yeah.
adjust cycle with a bit of intention. And again, it sounds simple, and most people think, well, I inherently do this. And I actually don't doubt that people do, but it's just that little bit of discipline or that little extra
Yeah.
that puts pen to paper and allows us to do it with more people collectively as opposed to an individual act.
Right. And the intentionality of really the top leaders to start to move their leadership system, their operating system this direction and develop. So much of it is developing people, right? And you started with safety. It's got to become acknowledging it can feel unsafe to move this direction, right? But then supporting people to get there and that become the safe way of doing it. So yeah, leaders striking out with support, with coaching sometimes, you love it, we love it, we know the power of it. And then setting themselves up as coaches to others in the ways that you've described to move us that direction. Yeah. And we do have some examples across healthcare of where leaders end up sleeping a little better at night and enjoy looking at themselves in the mirror maybe a little bit more because of these systems coming into place, right?
Yeah.
Um, well, Megan, I love talking to you, A, because I always learn, and B, because you're always getting to the depth of the matter candidly and sometimes help us face uncomfortable truths. And you're also optimistic and a builder. And I feel like you've just demonstrated that again about continuing to move forward and believing in leaders and helping them see and supporting them that better is possible, sleeping better is possible.
Sleeping better
um,
is possible.
Including for you and your teams. Not every night, but more
Right.
nights, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts? You have so many pearls that you'd like, the CEOs of tomorrow and today, chief medical officers, chief nursing officers, chief financial officers to hear um, about the topic.
Gosh, I think for healthcare specifically, if we could look at how we operate and give it the same sort of curiosity and um, just effort that we think so much about innovating in a clinical space, or looking at maybe the benchmarking space and how we compare to others. Um, I just think if we could give the same sort of attention and credence to how we work every day, that we do these breakthrough things, I just think it could be so powerful. Treating our organization as a system that we need to pay attention to, give some better planfulness to. Um, but also, I'm just continually in awe of the resilience of healthcare workers and, the why that gets everyone into this industry. And I just think that knowing that better is possible and being curious and open to new ideas. And then the burden is on folks like me and other people in the organization to show the results and the differences that can be made in that space. And just sort of connecting all of those things. But gosh, I mean, people caring about people is what this is all about. And I
Yeah.
think if we just use that mindset for things other than maybe we have historically or traditionally done in healthcare, that really the sky is the limit. I do think these problems are solvable, and I do think general excellence is possible. It may not be coming at the rate we all thought, and we might look at other industries and say, why are we lagging? I still think that the opportunity is there, and we're closer than ever to kind of breaking through it. And I'm excited to be part of people and places that are working to make that happen.
I was so glad I'm so glad I asked what else would you have to say? Because what a great way to pull everything together and get us moving and fired up to move further in that direction and keep us going, right? So thank you, Meghan Scanlon. Um, treasure our connection. I treasure your voice, and I'm so glad we could help bring it to our audience of leaders who are making a difference. And I'm sure this will generate a lot of interest. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for listening to Meghan. Always worthwhile. If you'd like to know more about how to sleep better at night and create a great operating system, check out our website at valuecapturellc.com. If you haven't already, please, like us and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And let's learn together and let's make things better together. Meghan, thank you for being my coach and doing so much for healthcare across your career.
Thanks, Ken, for the opportunity to think about something differently today.
Thanks for listening to Habitual Excellence by Value Capture. We hope you'll subscribe to the podcast. Please also rate and review it in your favorite podcast app. To learn more about value capture and how we can help your organization on a journey to habitual excellence, visit our website at www.valuecapturellc.com.